why there is such a sudden stress on Kashmir, and there is no better person than Professor R L Hangloo. I request now Professor R L Hangloo to address this audience.
Let me first of all wish you all a very happy new year, a very good morning. Our most esteemed Secretary of Sahitya Academy, Shri Srinivas Raoji, respected Dr. Garyali, esteemed Dr. Revati Ramachandran ji, my fellow brilliant academicians and scholars from Kashmir, Sanskritists, and our literary figures, Dr. Agnishekar, my friend, invited guests, the members of audience, dear students. There's plenty of information that one wants to mediate to public in Tamil Nadu because we have an ancient relationship with you. But as it happens in any seminar, there are constraints of time because everybody has to express his or her own idea. As Pingala Upanishad very rightly says, that even if we do researches and explore things, for 1,000 years we will not reach to the end of this scripture. Likewise, if we continue to explore Kashmir, till the last day this Srishti exists, I think we would not be even an iota of its culture would not be defined, in fact, even at that point of time. The region is very small, there is no doubt about it. Geographically speaking, leaving Ladakh aside, because there are sometimes confusions when we come to various parts of India. My experience of having 40 years traversed, particularly South India, after having taught for 40 years at Hyderabad Central University, is that they still have Bollywood images sometimes about Kashmir. Kashmir is a very small area, but very potential culturally in the world. When one of the Aryan tribes came around 4000 BC, the leader of the tribe entered and raised his hands and said, Kashyapa, what a beauty! The beauty that does not exist anywhere in the world. In Europe, people say Switzerland of, is the most beautiful area and so on. And Kashmir is the Switzerland. I would say that's wrong. Because there is no second Kashmir and there are no second Kashmiris. Not that I have megalomania about Kashmir, but it's a reality. You keep exploring. From very early times, from Gufkral, where the first couple appeared in prehistoric times, and how from prehistoric times the Kashmiris brick by brick built such a civilizational value, contributing to Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, Brahmanas, and so many other literary and religious texts. Religious and literary texts have a special relationship that is seen in Kashmir. And that's what Rigveda also says when Rigveda mentions Savlampayampas dharmestrayate mehto bayat. That is religion which provides answer, dharma, to all your problems. That's where the fragrance of Kashmiri civilization comes. Because Kashmiris or Kashmiri culture is a constituent of many civilizations. You go prior to Indus Valley civilization, you will find that Kashmiris were prior to that traversing entire Central Asia, Persia, Eastern Europe, the lands of China. Look at the way Kumarajiva is acknowledged as one of the best teachers by Buddhas in China. Gunavardhan, which Dr. Giriali mentioned you, it was in 348 that the Chinese emperor sponsored his trip to Japan and other places in the world to spread Buddhism. And each philosophy that came to Kashmir, that was evolved by Kashmiris, was critically examined by Kashmiris. It's not that everything they took and just digested and assimilated. No. The greatest instinct of Kashmiri civilization and Kashmiri culture is that they critique in a healthy manner to everything and then try to digest what is what. What is beneficial not for the Kashmiris, but for the entire humanity in the world. We talk of cultures, we say subordinate culture, dominant culture, popular culture, and do include political institutions, ideas, literature, fine arts, music. And I think I would not be wrong if I say that in a couple of decades we'll be also talking about the cyber culture. But Kashmir goes in its specificities of culture and literature beyond all these things. If we characterize or periodize Kashmir from very early ancient times down to present day, I have discovered that there are 7 phases, starting from prehistory, which succeed each other, define the colonial, the post-colonial periodization of Indian history and culture. And if you look at these 7 periods, there are 2-3 important things which cut across this entire civilization's culture, which rather I would say they overarch in every period coming from ancient times down to present day. One of the genre is this secular element. I'm not talking of modern secularism. I'm talking of religious versus non-religious. And if you look at that ancient aspect, you find that the Shaivism, which was early first Buddhism, and heretic tendencies and traditions have been very strong from ancient times down to present day. And these heretic traditions, they never contradicted with any aspect of Hinduism or any variant of Hinduism, because Hinduism is a very vast area. They do not contradict with Islam. A Muslim may read Quran in his house in a mosque, but when he faces extreme crisis, he goes to the ziyarat, the shrine of heretics, which is pre-ancient, I would say. Our heretics have been named and renamed and renamed, in fact, down to present times. If you look at the shrines of these rishis, Manak Shah becomes Manshah, Manak Rishi. But the shrine continues down to present day. They always go back to these places for solace and for seeking answers to their questions and problems and challenges. Even though Buddhism came and Kashmiris took Buddhism to entire Central Asia, to China, but they produced critically its own variant of Sarvastivada school of Buddhism, which was different than the rest of the philosophy of Ashtanga Marga. It has its own specificity. For some time, the Shaivites did not get patronage because there is always the question of patronage for the cultures to develop, for certain philosophies to develop. I am reminded of the period when Hyeon Song came to a shrine called Zeshta Rudra, which was a Buddhist site, but today it is known as the general Mother Goddess cult shrine. And he came in his itinerary stating that I have only 15 days time to come. But he was tempted, overwhelmed by the great Sanskrit and Aramaic scholars at Zeshta Rudra and stayed in a stuff. 15 days he stayed for more than a couple of months there, learning Sanskrit, and he mentions and admits how he was really overwhelmed by their critical thinking, their capacity to debate, and their knowledge. We had a special relationship with Tamil Nadu because our Shaivites and Tamil Shaivites debated the philosophy right from Somananda's time. Bhatta Kallata, Abhinav Gupta, so many others, in fact. Abhinav Gupta, of course, came from UP and settled down in Kashmir. There are plentiful of, if you go through Kemendra, you can look at the way scholars came from as far as Bengal to study Shaivism. And then we gave the Trikka philosophy. Trikka philosophy in the sense, look at the scientificity of Trikka philosophy. In India, we are not in a position to get rid of casteism even now. There's a very important Tamil saying that once a Dalit came to a priestly family and the priest says, I loved you so much, I want to hug you, but the only problem is that I have to take bath later on. But that is not Trikka philosophy. In Trikka philosophy, the first thing that happened in 4th century AD was caste was completely abolished. If today downtrodden labor class from Madhya Pradesh, from UP, from Assam, from Orissa, from any other region comes to Jammu or Kashmir, they feel very comfortable in Hindu families particularly, let me tell you. Because no Kashmiri Hindu entertains caste. It is in our blood. Because Trikka philosophy has taught us that Shiva abides in everybody. It was because of this Trikka philosophy, if you read H.H. Wilson, The Hindu History of Kashmir, there's a Sanskrit verse which I have translated and found for the first time, which people did not bother. That the Kashi Vishwanath temple Shiva Linga was brought from Kashmir. It were the Kashmiris who installed the Kashi Vishwanath Linga there. It was Mohanlal Kaul Kashmiri who helped British colonialism to spread its tentacles into Central Asia, threatening Russia. It was the Kaul family which facilitated Mongol invasion also and helped Genghis Khan. Not only philosophy and literature and other aspects, you find that Kashmiris have played a very, very significant role keeping in view. You show me a single branch of knowledge, polity, culture, aesthetics, where the members from this small community are missing. And this culture was not evolved in post-14th century. This culture was evolved in very, very ancient times and made a very significant progress. You find that this Buddhist philosophy, Sarvastivada Sukula Buddhism, heretic tradition, the Shaivite Trikka philosophy, and then Laldat before she left. Look at the crisis. I will tell you a very interesting thing. You read G. Naidu's scriptures on Buddhism, which he has translated now. There's plentiful of literature. When Mongols came and took away thousands of men and women and sold them in the market, thousands, I am telling you, and sold them in the markets of Central Asia, Egypt, Iraq, many other places all over the world. the Kashmiris responded philosophically. Because in 14th century, Arabs came, Egyptians came, Afghans came, Turks came, Tajiks came. This is also a misnomer that they came because there were a lot of Muslims in Central Asia and therefore for support of Islam. This is a misnomer. There's plentiful of literature that they were all over the crisis, they were coming to seek refuge in Kashmir. And what did these people do? Even if I stay for 1,000 years in Tamil Nadu, I may continue my tradition. But in the heart of my heart, I would be proud of Kashmir always. That's what happens to any civilization if a Tamilian goes to Kashmir, if a Kannadiga goes to Kashmir or somewhere else. But look at the resilience of Kashmiri civilization and culture, that all those who came in thousands and thousands, look at the literature that is provided to us by Andri Gundar Frank, Centrality of Central Asia, and the people who came, they all accepted Kashmiri culture as superior culture and subordinated their civilizational values, whatever, whether it was tribal or non-tribal or detribalized situation, they subordinated that to Kashmiri culture and took pride in it. I can give you a very wonderful example, you'll be surprised. The day Sheikh Abdullah was jailed in 1953, that morning also we had 450 plus Kazakhs coming from Kazakhstan. 200 of them left for Turkey, rest all stayed in Kutli Bagh, Gandharbal area. Maybe in the past few decades they also said, "Hum kya chahte azadi?" By what azadi? You are not a Kashmiri. But they have all submerged, you can imagine, over a period of time, giving up their roots, not going back to their roots, but changing, because it is not their greatness. The greatness is the values left behind by these Kashmiri philosophers, intellectuals, writers. We have plentiful of literature, Krishna Dev Raya's literature, Sangam literature in Tamil Nadu, Mangal Kavyas in Bengal, Bakhars in Maharashtra. Plentiful of truckloads of literature in every language and region. But why it takes only for us to recognize Kalhana, who also wrote a Kavya, but that Kavya became such a wonderful historical text wherein he critiques his own father at the functioning of the court, where his relations and uncles were also working as ministers and important officials. His father was a commander of the frontiers at that point of time, but he critiques him. He takes information every day from a very ordinary servant who had no biases left, and then examines that, and that's what goes into making of such a wonderful text in the world. The first historical text of India. When we compare that with the positivists, Marxists, colonialists, many other genre of historians, Kalhana stands alone. And he stands very tall in history writing of Kashmir and the world, of course. You look at his approach, his sources, and his vision at that point of time. Look at, I was referring the crisis that when these thousands of people were taken as hostages and sold as slaves. What should have been the normal reaction? To take up stones and throw it at the people? No. Lalla came forward. The great poetess, the great spiritualist, the great icon archetype of civilization, and said, Shiv Shri Thali Thali Rozan Mauzan Batatam Salman. Trukhai Chukta Pan Parznav Saiche Sahibasid Zainizan. That if you are accepting the philosophy of Tripka and Shaivism, then when you say Shiva resides in everybody, he's in everybody's Atma, then don't make a distinction between a Hindu and a Muslim, between a Bhatta the term being used for all of us in Kashmir. And others, you realize yourself. That is how you will become one with the God. After this, we also find, apart from production of plentiful of literature from ancient times down to 14th century, a remarkable development takes place. Even though Muslim historians continue from 14th century taking clues from Kalyani and Jonaraja and write histories, but the marked difference is that right from Kerala up to Kashmir, but not in Kashmir, all the scholars in Iran, in Persia, in other places in the world, when they are talking of the evolution of Islam, they are dubbing the civilizations as Jahiliyyah before the coming of Islam. That all civilizations are not good civilizations, it was only after the coming of Islam. But the historians, even Muslim historians in Kashmir, do not do that, because you cannot shut reason to that cultural development that had taken place earlier. None of, looking at the first Tariq Sayyid Ali's Tariq Kashmir, nowhere he mentions about Jahiliyyah and Islamic civilization. Not at all. He is talking of the facts and trying to copy the style of Kalyani and Jonaraja. So Lalded on one side laid the foundations of world, not India, I would say world multiculturalism. If the scholars of earlier periods or post-modern scholars have to look for multiculturalism, I think they cannot ignore Lalishwari. They just cannot ignore, because she is the founder of multiculturalism in the world. It's not, as people say, oh, these phenomena of nationalism, capitalism, of course, is later stage, that these are modern concepts and so on. But you have this concept listed there much earlier, in fact. Then came Paramarth Saraf. This was provided to by Abhinav Gupta earlier, but it was picked up by rishis, Sufi saints, and what we call Adhyatmikta, Paramarth, or our Muslim brethren calls it Tasawwuf, which has also its own specificities. In all these periods, we see that one of the important aspects has been that Kashmiris have tried to seek resolution of these problems by going back to philosophy. Even in 1990s, one of the villagers who did not know how to read and write, but he provided orally spiritual poetry, Zargar Habib. You know what he says? He's appealing in his poetry to Muslims not to take up guns, because that's not the tradition of Kashmir. And he says, Atsiviyat Naras, Atsiviyat Garas, Zalvanis Naras Karavatvas. That you go back to shrines. Before that, a couple of lines he talks about that, go back to shrines and seek solution through spiritually to your problems and so on. Pakistan's duty would be always, neighbor's duty is always, politically speaking, to destabilize its neighbor. And you cannot make dog's tail straight even if you iron it 100 times. That mentality would always be there. But we should continue to explore the variants of Kashmir's culture, Kashmir's literature, its Sufi poetry, its Sanskrit poetry. I would personally be obliged and request on behalf of all our Kashmir scholars to our great Srinivas Rao Sahab, who has taken really wonderful initiatives in Sahitya Academy after he took over, that he should order for collection of entire Mahatmya literature and you have Sanskrit scholars and get them translated, because this is a great wealth that Kashmir will never be in a position to reconstruct. Mahatmas need to be provided to public. You need to visit different museums and identify these things, because this wealth belongs to the world, not only to Kashmir and India. It belongs to the world. I will, very simple expression of Kashmiri poetry I want to tell you. There's a poet who says, Zar zajda zar kota zar naichas mai. Baraizehem barmaras bar kota go. In the first line, you find word zar being interpreted in 3 different meanings. Zar zajda zar kota zar naichas mai. That he has burned me. I may not be the exact translator. How much should I tolerate? The fellow does not have even an iota of love for me. Just a spiritual poetry, it's not a romantic. Even if you would enter my house, I would sacrifice lamb. But the amount of how much anger he has, how much negligence he is following towards me. You do not find in any poetry. We love all poetry from all regions of India. We love Ghalib, we love Kalhana, we love everybody. But this expression you don't find anywhere in literature. And there is plenty of such information which is available to all of us. Despite the crisis of 14th century, crisis of 18th century, which have been in a series from 14th century till date, I would say that if 1/100th part of a single Kashmiri Pandit survives, the civilization would again and again and again make a comeback. Because it is not majority which makes difference in the world. If you have read Rousseau, Voltaire, the great philosophers of the world, including Kalhana, Manka and others, it is the smallest minority that makes public opinion. It's not majority. We may shout from rooftops, but it is minority which makes public opinion in the world for any development to go through. I don't claim to be a great scholar. As the Upanishadic saying says, that there are people who are completely ignorant, they are in darkness, but those who have studied much more, they are in still far more darkness. I profusely thank the secretary. I would love to talk to you more and more, but problem is our time has also to be budgeted. But I would end with the words, अब और आएंगे नगमों की खिलती कलियां चुनने वाले, हमसे बेहतर कहने वाले, तुमसे बेहतर सुनने वाले. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Hangloo, for such a comprehensive presentation. Small is beautiful. Yeah. And now I request Dr. Revati Ramachandran to conclude the session by sharing her thoughts.